June 23 edition of PFT PM. They tell me this is the slow time. It is anything but slow. We're into week 2 of our 6-week PFT Live hiatus. There's still a lot happening, as evidenced by the fact that I'm here and ready to go and have plenty of things to talk about from the weekend that was. Let's get right to it. The highest unsigned pick from the 2025 draft, Travis Hunter, cornerback / receiver for the Jacksonville Jaguars, has agreed to terms, second overall pick. More than $30 million signing bonus. That's all slotted. That's all determined. That's all a product of where he was selected. It has nothing to do with the fact that he will, in theory, be doing double duty for the Jaguars. And this is, to me, the most fascinating aspect of the entire Travis Hunter experience, because the Jaguars are going to pay one guy, one rate to do two jobs. And by rule, there's no way he can get paid to play two positions, because his compensation under his rookie contract is driven by one thing and one thing only: the spot where he was drafted. He could be anything: quarterback, defensive tackle, kicker. It doesn't matter. If you're the second overall pick in the draft, that's what you get. And you could argue it's unfair. And the only recourse for Travis Hunter is to say, sorry, I'm only playing one position. It gets very interesting if the team tries to tell him he's going to play two positions and he would take it up with the union. I don't think it's ever going to get to that. The more likely outcome is after his third NFL regular season, because by rule, draft picks can sign a second contract the moment the third regular season ends. And I'm still waiting for someone to demand his second contract between the end of the regular season and the start of the postseason, because that is permissible. And maybe Travis Hunter will be the first if the Jaguars are a playoff team in 3 years. But once the window opens for a second contract, that's when he can say, hey, wait a minute. I'm doing two jobs full time. You're paying me for one. That's got to change. And that's where the tension could become evident, because I believe one of the reasons the Jaguars were happy to trade up from 5 to 2 and give up next year's first-round draft pick plus more to get Travis Hunter, they see that they're getting two players for the price of one for his 4-year rookie contract and maybe the 5th-year option, which will be driven by one position or the other, not both. He'll either get a 5th-year option premised on him playing receiver, or a 5th-year option premised on him playing defensive back. It's going to depend on where he takes more of his snaps. Same thing for the franchise tag. If they kick the can through 5 years and apply the tag, it'll be one rate of pay, not two. So maybe the Jaguars thought they'd get 4 years, and most teams would like to get 4 years out of a first-round draft pick, because that 4th year usually comes at a very low rate. Whether it's 3, whether it's 4, whether it's 5. At some point, the issue will be, if Travis Hunter has made good on the potential that prompted the Jaguars to trade up to get him. See, the Jaguars think this is going to work. They think he's going to be an effective receiver and an effective cornerback. And if that's the case, at some point, they've got to pay him. It's going to be one of the most challenging and unique negotiations we have ever seen. Do you just pay him what a top 10 receiver and a top 15, top 20 cornerback would get slapped into one? Is there credit given to the team because there's double the injury risk? And really, since there's double the injury risk, that's all the more reason for the player to want more security. Will he at some point decide, I'm only playing one side of the ball? Will he become jaded after he understands more about the NFL business? It's one thing to come into the NFL saying, yeah, I want to keep doing what I've been doing. Well, he's going to have to work harder. People like John Harbaugh have said there aren't enough hours in the day to fully prepare. What if he puts in the time and the effort? What if he does end up being great as a receiver and as a cornerback? At some point, he needs to be fairly paid. We'll see if that happens. Good problem to have for the Jaguars. But as I say time and again, the only good problem is no problem. And if this thing works out as well as the Jaguars hope, there could be a problem looming for the Jaguars. A good problem, which is better than their years of bad problems. Speaking of bad problems, the Miami Dolphins had decided back in April that they're moving on from cornerback Jalen Ramsey. And this thing was clear. It was obvious. It's over. Ramsey has tweeted his farewells. The Dolphins excused Ramsey from the mandatory minicamp to cap the offseason program. I fully expect he won't be at training camp until the trade is finalized. And there was some talk last week that maybe a trade happens before camp opens. Chargers and the Rams, the two teams mentioned. I haven't seen anything clear and concrete linking the Chargers to Jalen Ramsey. And there needs to be at least two teams involved because the Dolphins have no leverage as it relates to the notion that we'll just keep him. Well, enter Tyreek Hill, the Dolphins receiver, who says now out of the blue, he needs to have Jalen Ramsey on the team, and he's going to try to convince Jalen Ramsey to stay. Now, that implies that Ramsey wants to go. And I think Hill would also have to convince the team to want to keep Ramsey. But, in a weird way, it does help the Dolphins if Hill can have some success. I don't think he can. But if all of a sudden Ramsey's talking like a guy who would stay in Miami because Tyreek Hill some way, somehow got through to him, yeah, that builds the leverage a bit. That gives the Dolphins the ability to say to the Rams, if they're being lowballed, we'll just keep him. It has to be credible. It has to be plausible. It has to be effective. Or at the end of the day, the Dolphins are going to end up doing a bad deal. It's their own fault. They gave the guy a contract that made him the highest paid player at his position in September of last year. Something happened between September and April that caused Ramsey and the Dolphins to decide to part ways. And I think it's interesting that Tyreek Hill is the one who's playing ambassador to try to keep Ramsey around. Tyreek's the guy who said after the last regular season ended he wanted to leave Miami. And look, I've heard this. I haven't confirmed it. I don't know that there's any effective way to confirm it, but there's chatter out there that one of the reasons Ramsey wants out and one of the reasons Hill wanted out, they don't believe that their quarterback, Tua Tagovailoa, can get them where they want to be, which would make it, I don't know, coincidental, ironic, or a little of both, that Hill would be the one trying to change Ramsey's mind. Maybe we'll see Tyreek Hill making some bold proclamations again about Tua being the most accurate quarterback in the NFL. Maybe he'll put him in his top 5 instead of Baker Mayfield. Only time will tell. But it just contributes to the vibe, the funk that's hanging over the Dolphins right now. I'm going to talk in a minute more about that. All right. I posted the always controversial preseason or post-off-season program or post-minicamp, post-OTA, whatever label you want to apply. This is our snapshot of the 32 NFL teams, given that the hay is in the barn as it relates to the entire offseason program, and we're now in the countdown to the start of training camp. Where do the 32 teams fit? And it's always a challenge because somebody's got to be 32. And I know that the NFL has mastered the art of selling hope, plausible or otherwise, to every fan of every team. This year can be the year. And even if you are number 32, even if you're the Browns, who, as I mentioned in the piece, almost seem to be trying to find new ways to be dysfunctional. Even if you're the Browns or the Saints, who seem to be ready to collapse unless Tyler Shuck ends up being the guy right away. No matter where you are, somebody's got to have those spots. It can't be a 32-way tie for one or 1, 2, 3, and then everybody else tied. You have to prioritize. And it's not a prediction. That's the one thing to remember. It's not a prediction as to how teams are going to finish. It's where they are now. And they can skew one way or the other. I put the Steelers dead in the middle. I guarantee you're not going to finish the season dead in the middle. This Aaron Rodgers thing is either going to work really well and they'll be a top 7 team, or it's going to be a crap show and they're going to be in the bottom 4th of the league. They're not going to be in the middle when it's all said and done. But right now, they're kind of in the middle because I don't know which way it's going to break. Do you? Does anyone? I'm sure that we'll see the clips and the tweets of all the people who guessed right. But right now, it really is a guessing game. It amazes me when I put out the net for new news use the various algorithms and formulas and other sources that are available to me to see what's being reported, news that's being reported. It's amazing how much of what is out there nowadays is just this person thinks that about that team. This former player thinks that. This analyst said that. Everybody's got an opinion and nobody knows. See, we're in the phase where the appetite for NFL content is so strong that people will consume, like you are right now, somebody talking about what might happen weeks/months from now. I don't know. You don't know. We don't know. But we talk about it because it fills the hours and the days and the weeks until the games start and we find out. So for now, yes, the Eagles continue to be the cream of the crop. And yes, the Chiefs, even though they lost badly in the Super Bowl, they're still going to be there. The usual suspects are at the top. It's more challenging to fill out the bottom because I know that fans of teams like the Dolphins, all the Dolphins fans are big mad that I've got them near the bottom behind the Jets. They're big mad, but that's kind of what I feel like they are right now. I mean, the window opened a few years ago. Didn't work out. They've got a well-earned reputation, as said by Jordan Brooks, a player on the team, that the defense was soft in a Thanksgiving night loss to the Packers. I look at the Dolphins and I say, what are they really going to be this year? Now, maybe they'll finish higher than fourth in the division. I don't know. I think that there's a chance they get left in the dust. I think Aaron Glenn and Darren Muji will make the Jets better. How quickly that takes, I don't know. I think the Patriots will be much better than people realize. And yeah, I think there's a chance the Dolphins end up in last place. And and this is where I think the pressure will be the greatest early in the year. If the Dolphins start to lose games, if Tua gets injured, if Tyreek Hill can't resist the demons that cause him to act up from time to time, and we've seen it, it's documented, whether it's things he says or things he allegedly or actually does. If there's enough frustration that just causes it all to fall apart, it could be a long year for the Dolphins, and there could be plenty of changes that come after the season. All right. Those are the topics to start off this week in PFT PM. I will tell you something. Tomorrow, and I can't go into a lot of detail. Tomorrow could be interesting. That's all I'm going to say. I don't know that it will be. It could be. Stay tuned. Tomorrow, newsflash, could be. Could be interesting. You'll understand tomorrow. All right, for now, let's answer a few questions. Big Daddy Bustard. What will happen with Aaron Rodgers' legacy and Tomlin's, for that matter, if they take the Steelers to the Super Bowl? Not win, just go. I think it's huge for Rodgers to get back to a Super Bowl. I think that's gigantic. He's only been to one. For Mike Tomlin, he's been to two, lost to Rodgers back in Super Bowl 45 in Dallas. I think it's huge if they get to a Super Bowl. I've said that the pass-fail for the Steelers' experiment with Aaron Rodgers is simple. Win a playoff game, and it's a success. Not make the playoffs or lose a playoff game, and it's a failure, because it's the same thing they've been doing. The Steelers made this weird pivot toward acting in a way they've never acted before. The DK Metcalf trade and contract, Aaron Rodgers. This is a different team than we've seen. If they don't at least win a playoff game, why'd you bother? And after they win a playoff game, anything they do beyond that is gravy. And if they would get to a Super Bowl, yeah, that would exceed the expectations, especially when you consider the quality of the teams in the AFC. You got the Chiefs, you got the Bills, you got the Ravens, you got the Bengals, the Texans. The Texans thumped the Steelers during the 2023 regular season as the Texans were beginning the process of declaring themselves to be a contender. So, yeah, it's going to be a tough mountain to climb to get to the Super Bowl. That will be a huge accomplishment. And that will, not that their legacies need to be cemented, but it will be a reminder that they still can do it. And I also think that if they get to the Super Bowl or close to it, we could have another Aaron Rodgers year. And to Steelers fans, I would say, go back and look at what the Vikings did the year after Brett Favre, the first Brett Favre year. The second Brett Favre year, not nearly as good. And you got to ask yourself, if you catch lightning in a bottle for that 1 year and everything works out, that's not reason enough to run it back, because there's a chance it's not going to be as good the second time. Brandon Elkins. How many owners cringe every year at the fact that the cap continues to go up? Is it a catch-22 that the owners continue to enrich themselves through the multiple revenue streams the NFL has created to raise the salary cap, thus creating pressure to spend more on players? Look, this gets to, and I'm going to combine this with the question from Dylan. Let's do these two together. I apologize if that causes any technical challenges, but Dylan wanted to know this: how real were the talks at the owners' meeting about changes to the salary cap rules? Just tweaks to signing, option bonus proration, or something more sweeping? How can they even change without ratifying the CBA? And would all of this have to wait until a new broadcast deal? Look, I'm going to put these together because here's what I think is going on. I think that the owners have realized, this is what I think, and I gleaned this from the comments that Roger Goodell seemed to gratuitously make when he was addressing reporters after the quarterly meetings in Minneapolis last month. I think that the owners have decided they're paying the players too much money, and they don't have to pay them as much as they're paying them. That 50 cents on the dollar no longer works because the revenues keep going up and up and up. And also expenses are up and we have to pay all of it out of our end. I mean, for the players, it's a great deal. The players have all revenue and no expense. The owners bear all of the expenses from their own half of the split. All the coaches, the scouts, all the employees, all the travel, everything, it comes out of their end. The players just get the money. They get their salary. And as the numbers go up and up and up, the fair question is, would they agree to do it for less than half of everything that goes through the cash register? And I think they're starting to ask, and I think this is why Goodell spoke that, why he put it out there. It's a marker that what's coming in 2031 when the current CBA expires, unless they do a new deal before then, but what's coming may be a reconfiguration of how the players are paid. They'll still get objectively a lot of money. It just won't be half of the revenues that keep going up and up and up. There's no obligation to do a 50-50 revenue share. The only obligation is to do whatever deal the two sides can agree to. And this is where I keep coming back to the reality that one side will invoke the nuclear option, that the owners will shut down a season if they have to, and the players won't. The owners own the teams for decades. The players have a fleeting opportunity to get NFL money. And as long as that imbalance exists, the opportunity is there for the owners to drive a harder bargain, to come up with a different way to fund the salary cap. So it's a smaller percentage. So it's a fixed number for the next 10 years. Here are the salary caps. We know the salary caps in advance for the next 10 years. They could do that. They can do whatever they want. It's whatever the two sides agree to. And at the end of the day, it's whatever the owners are willing to draw a line in the sand over, confident that the players will accept it, because the alternative is you don't get to play football and you don't get paid. And I'm amazed, frankly, that the owners haven't pushed harder. For as much criticism as there was about the 2011 CBA, the formula that D. Smith was able to get from the league, you look at where it is now, and the fact that you have one side, the owners, beginning to complain in a roundabout way, without flat out saying it, but the message was. And again, these things don't happen accidentally. Roger Goodell doesn't stand up there and just talk about whatever he feels like talking about. There's a message in everything he says, especially when it's not in response to a question he was asked. A point he wanted to make that day was, we spent a lot of time talking about the salary cap, talking about expenses, talking about fundamentally I believe, whether or not they can cram a tougher deal onto the players, get the 18 games, get the 16 international games, and change the way the salary cap is calculated, change the amount of money the players get. Because what are they going to do? They're going to go on strike? Are they going to take a lockout? Are they going to miss a game check? No, no, and no. Next question, Luke Morrison, the pros and cons of a European division. One of the cons for me is that most of us already support an established American team. I'm not sure a European team with no history would get supported in the same way. That's the question. That's not my answer. Look, the pros are the NFL wants to export the pro football virus globally. That the NFL believes it can make a lot more money if you take the existing inventory and you get people around the world as invested in pro football as we are. It's a long way to go. A long way to go. You've got soccer, which is the dominant sport worldwide. You've got cricket. I wrote something last week about the audience for the Indian Premier League cricket final. 169 million. Now, someone from the league pointed out, and I haven't written about this yet, but it just shows they're paying attention. There was something about the numbers that, the Super Bowl actually did better. Like, okay, why do you care? Well, they know. They know where they fit, and they know where they're trying to go. So the pros are, if you put teams in Europe, and I think it would be 2 in London and 2 others in Germany, maybe both in Germany, maybe 1 in Germany, 1 in Spain, 1 in Germany, 1 in France, 1 in Germany, 1 in Italy. I don't know. But I think there'd be 2 teams in London. There's already 2 NFL-ready stadiums in London, Tottenham Hotspur and Wembley. That's where 2 of them would be. The other 2 would be elsewhere. Those are the pros. You make the sport truly international by having 4 teams in another continent. The cons would be, how do you reconfigure the league? How do you do this? How do you drop 4 teams into a European division? What's the burden going to be on the players on those teams when they have to go on the road? Usually when there's a road trip, you leave on Saturday and you're back Sunday night. Now you're going to go on a road trip, you'll be gone for 3 weeks. You're going to America to play multiple games before you come home. If you have a wife, if you have a family, if you have people living with you in your European city, you're going to be gone. They're going to come with you the whole time. It just introduces issues that we don't currently see with all of the teams in the United States. There's the travel burden. There's the exchange rates. There's the fact that there's different governments, different political powers, tax rates. Will players want to go? And we reported last week that the union is already planning for the possibility of the league wanting it. And the union pushed back, but it was kind of a semantics thing. I know that the union is bracing for the league to ask for it. And maybe because at the end of the day, the union knows if the league says this is it or else, the players aren't going to take the or else. The players aren't going to go without playing football for a week, for a month, and definitely not for a year. So, look, you could have all sorts of competitive problems. Anything that you would do to try to make it easier for the European teams to compete, well, if those teams end up being good, we've done too much. I think it's harder to preserve competitive integrity if you have teams in other countries. As we've seen with the practical impacts of gambling, scheduling, short weeks, multiple teams with multiple short weeks in a given season, I don't think they care about competitive integrity anymore. I don't. They care about money. It's a business. Football fans don't like to hear it. It's the truth. It's a business, and the pressure on any successful business is to keep finding ways to become more and more and more successful. They want to globalize this sport. It's a 100-year plan to become a dominant, maybe not the dominant, may never catch soccer, but I remember a time when you would have asked the average American, there's no way in hell football's ever catching baseball. Cincy Buck guy, how serious is the idea that Shamar Stewart could go back into the draft? I think it's highly unlikely. He'd have to sit out the whole year, not play football for a whole year, give up the signing bonus he'd make this year, re-enter the draft, and not be drafted as high as he was drafted this year. He was drafted 17th this year. Do you really think if he returns to the draft and doesn't play football this year, he's going to be picked in the same spot when he's competing with guys who did play football this year? And then there's that wrinkle that Michael Hawley introduced when we were discussing it on PFT Live. Would there be some sort of blowback to Shamar Stewart? A little collusion? A little, how dare you buck the sorting hat? How dare you not regard the fact that you were picked 17th overall by the Bengals as an honor and a privilege? That's the risk that you're taking, on top of just the fact that you don't play football for a year. The other guys that are being drafted did. What do? Do you go through the combine again? How's that even work? I think it's highly unlikely, but the problem is the Bengals are stubborn. Usually it's the Bengals are cheap. On this, they're being stubborn. They want to cram new language onto Shamar Stewart without making a concession. Any type of bargaining situation, when you want something new, you better be ready to give something up. The Bengals just want to change the language of the contract unilaterally. Even though Shamar Stewart was drafted a spot higher than Amarius Mims last year, Amarius Mims got better language. They want to change it for Shamar Stewart. Interesting question. Are they going to change their guaranteed default language for Trey Hendrickson too? If they ever get to a consensus on money, it'd be interesting to see whether or not they insist that Hendrickson take the same language they're trying to foist onto Shamar Stewart. Because T. Higgins and Jamar Chase, they have the same language that Amarius Mims has. They're trying to change this language out of the blue on Shamar Stewart. And to his credit, he's not giving in. It's a matter of principle. And for the Bengals, the principle that matters is they're stubborn. All right, last one. Benny Tiller, 4 edge rushers with contracts pending. Who ends up getting the most? The Bengals, or who ends up paying the most? The Bengals, the Cowboys, the Lions, or the Steelers? And of course, that relates to Trey Hendrickson, Micah Parsons, Aiden Hutchinson, and TJ Watt, respectively. I think that the team that will end up paying the most, my guess, and again, this is just a guess, I think it's going to be the Lions, because I think they're going to kick the can through this season and wait to see if Aiden Hutchinson becomes the guy that he once was. And if he does, they're going to have to pay him more than what the highest contract will be between Micah Parsons and TJ Watt. And I think between Parsons and Watt, it's going to be a question of who goes second. See, both teams have blown their chance to get this deal done, because right now, if I'm Parsons, if I'm Watt, I want to see what the other guy gets, because then I know that's my target. That plus $100,000 a year. So I'm the highest paid non-quarterback in league history. But I think that, unless the Lions should move now and get Hutchinson done, but they have to be taking on the risk that this leg injury from last year is going to be a problem. But if he's fine, and if he's back to being the guy, he will have bet on himself and won, because I think a year from now, he'll be the guy who's got more than any of them, because the cap keeps going up. The market keeps going up. We saw it this year. We'll see it every year. I had one last question, but I forgot to bring the show and tell. The question from Set the Narrative, trading card, show us what you got. I'll leave that question in the document for tomorrow, and I'll hope to not forget to bring down a small collection of some of the cards that I have. And I've got a lot of them, but I keep the best ones in my office. They're right there. Hopefully for tomorrow's PFT PM, I will bring them down. That's not the thing that I was mentioning earlier. Could be interesting tomorrow. And I'm not going to oversell it. I'm not going to undersell it. I'm not going to sell it. All I'm saying is, considering that the calendar will read June 24 and that there otherwise should be nothing at all going on in the National Football League, all I'll say is tomorrow could be interesting. Which, any day could be interesting. Tomorrow could be interesting. With that, I'll say tune in tomorrow and check us out around the clock at profootballtalk.com. Thanks for some of your time. See you on Tuesday. Hi, it's Mike Florio. Thanks for watching PFT on YouTube. Hit subscribe for the latest news and analysis from Pro Football Talk.